Howdy doody everyone, Wombu here. A lot of people have been coming up to me, and you know what they say to me? They say to me, Wombu, you should make a TF2 countdown. I say, I've already made a TF2 countdown. And they say, make another one. And I say, how about I make a countdown on Overwatch? And they say, that's stupid. You're stupid! So I've been super into Overwatch recently. The fact that I'm even making this video might make my thoughts on it kinda obvious, but I really like this game. After playing TF2 for years and admittedly having my interest in it wane a little bit, it's really great to see another FPS with this much substance. Every single hero in this game mechanically operates so differently from one another, and with 22 different heroes, you're bound to find a few, if not several, that meet your fancy. And today we're looking at 10 of those that did that for me. I don't have any rules or objective criterias for this one. If I like the way a character plays, they're going on the list. Though I should mention that Overwatch does tend to get patched and updated a lot, so I'm basing this list on this version of the game, meaning that right now Ana is the newest hero. So if this list ends up being mostly obsolete by the time I upload, which, knowing my luck, is a strong possibility, I'll be updating my rankings in the description. With all that out of the way, let's get right into it. Number 10 on this list was pretty hard to pick. Really, I like this hero on the same level as the honorable mentions that I'll be bringing up later on the list. I basically just went with the one that I thought would be the most fun to talk about, so you guys are gonna need to take this one with a grain of salt. You'd be forgiven for thinking that TORBJORN is basically just Overwatch's version of TF2's Engineer. You'd also be right in thinking that. Okay, not entirely. Yeah, building turrets is a big part of both of them, but TORBJORN requires a lot less work. I mean that in a good way. Unlike in TF2, building and upgrading a turret doesn't require any resources, just the shift button and a couple whacks of your mighty forge hammer. And if your turret does happen to die, you see that? That's a shift button. Press it! That might sound overpowered, but it's really not. The turrets really aren't that powerful on their own. Plus, they can't be upgraded fully unless TORBJORN uses his Molten Core ultimate, and even then, it's a temporary upgrade. With TORBJORN, it works though, because he's designed to disincentivize turtling. The turrets do rack up most of the damage, but TORBJORN himself is packing a surprisingly potent rivet gun that's effective both at range and close up. More than that though, he can also collect scrap from fallen enemies and use it to make armor for himself and his teammates, giving him a slight support job to play. So see, he's really not that much like the Engineer. He's more like the Gunslinger Engineer. Of all the different hero classes, I'd say the tank is likely one of my favorite roles to play. There's something super satisfying to me about being able to sponge damage for your team while dishing out some pretty heavy hits in return. Not that it has anything to do with this particular character. Roadhog is a tank in the same way that a pancake is a frisbee. Some of the elements are there, the huge physique, the 600 health, the short to mid-range, the 600 health, the flat disc shape that's quite aerodynamic and easy to throw. The 600 health! Honestly, that's probably the only thing that lumbers him into the tank role, because playing him in a similar way than you would Reinhardt or Zarya is a bad idea. Unlike every other tank in the game, Roadhog doesn't have any means of protecting teammates, and because of the lack of any armor or shield, getting yourself ripped apart by the enemy team will build their ultimates really quick. It's not to say Roadhog is bad at what he does, though. What we have instead is a self-sufficient, ambush-oriented character. The main combo is to pull people over with your hook and kindly acquaint their head with the barrel end of your scrap gun. And if you almost die, take a breather and recover 300 HP. It means that Roadhog is mostly going to want to be focusing on getting those vital picks on squishy characters or healers, or completely shutting down ultimates. It's admittedly a pretty niche job for a tank, but all kinds of satisfying when done well. In fact, pretty much all of his attacks combo obnoxiously well together, with the exception of his ultimate, which is kind of If you want to get the full combo off on someone though, you could use the secondary fire, then use the chain, then the primary fire, and then the melee. If you pull it off correctly, you've probably already overkilled them by that point, to be totally honest. Roadhog, best pancake in Overwatch. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda hate this guy. Funny, I don't remember Hot Topic selling shotguns. In terms of gameplay mentality, I often hear Reaper compared to the Spy from TF2. Oh boy, here I go with the TF2 comparisons again. Up close, he's one of the deadliest heroes in the game. I don't care what you happen to be equipped with, you do not want to be 1v1ing a guy with 2 shotguns at close range. The major factor is whether or not Reaper can actually get into a good position to tear away at people with his shotguns. He's certainly got the tools to do so, with a teleportation that lets him move across gaps without being spotted, and a Wraith form that gives him brief invulnerability. Though, the teleportation in particular can be a bit unreliable sometimes, given that Reaper fucking announces his teleport.
Death comes.
Hey guys, I'm over here in case anyone wanted to kill me.
If you do manage to kill an enemy up close, though, you can heal yourself using the souls that they drop. Admittedly, this does make for a mechanically simple character compared to a lot of the other heroes, but it doesn't make him less scary to go against. A Reaper that doesn't know how to do stealth is easy to deal with, but a Reaper that knows what they're doing doesn't really have any hard counters. I also just want to make it clear that my reasons for sticking Reaper on this list have everything to do with his gameplay, and nothing to do with his actual character. I find him utterly insufferable, to be totally honest. His edgelord shtick was funny at first, but good god, did that wear itself out fast. Everything he says is in this slow, obnoxious, gravelly voice that's trying way too hard to sound menacing.
Death becomes you. Death comes for all. Death walks among you from the shadows. Get out of here. Get out of there. Get over here. I am the Reaper.
Ooh, death, yeah, death is super scary. People die during it.
Actually, did you guys know that this is the same voice actor for Blue and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends? I think that might actually make him funny again.
I'm not a monkey.
I'm gonna get some more cake. I'm in training.
Okay, you guys are gonna have to bear with me on this one. Oopsie boopsie, I just did the bad thing. If you don't know, I just put one of the most hated characters in the entire game at number 7 on my favorites list. Just please hear me out though, and maybe, just maybe, I will be able to come out of this with some credibility intact. That might be wishful thinking, though. I said in the last entry that Reaper is mechanically pretty simple, but that might go double for Bastion, or Trashgen, as I like to call it. The main deal with this guy is that it has two different forms. The first is its bipedal recon form with the submachine gun, and the other is its stationary turret form, the latter of which has some of the strongest damage output in the entire game. I'm not gonna make excuses, okay? The loadout does encourage turtling. Like, a lot. I'm not going to act like there aren't annoying Bastion players. And from that perspective, I can see why people might not like playing him or playing against him. You could just sit in the same spot the whole time and maybe do reasonably well, but it's when you learn how to make use of the recon form that Bastion becomes a ton of fun, at least for me. Now, like I said, everyone hates Bastion, and this shows in gameplay. Every single time an enemy knows where you're set up, you become their immediate target, and they will do whatever is in their power to fuck you. In a bad way. But then when you move to a different spot, no one knows where to look, and then you just find new angles in which to turn them into Swiss cheese. And for me personally, I just don't tire of that. It's probably not the expected way to play Bastion, but when you are able to set up somewhere good at just the right time, and blow down almost all of the enemy team, be it with the turret or the ultimate, it feels amazing, especially when everyone groans, knowing that they're likely going to be seeing yet another Bastion play of the game. I would call it a guilty pleasure, but I'm not actually sorry. I think ultimately though, while I do totally understand the hate, I don't feel it myself. I really like Bastion. From a hero that's often labeled as brainless, we jump to a hero that's arguably one of the most difficult to play as. Upon first taking Genji out for a spin, one might think, what the fuck barbecue, why does this guy suck? The answer... he doesn't. Like, not at all. Certainly not mobility-wise, obviously, when you factor in his double jump, his ability to climb walls, and his swift strike move. On the other hand, though, he is quite squishy, and none of his attacks individually do a particularly large chunk of damage. You'll be working a lot to notch those kills, especially if you're fighting tanks. Genji really shines, though, when his attacks are used effectively in tandem with one another and his aforementioned high mobility. In a 1v1, he may not whittle down your health as fast as Reaper, but he's dangerous at multiple ranges, and he's way less predictable. Another thing worth mentioning is Genji's reflect move, which in the right circumstance is absolute bullshit. He can't reflect beam weapons, but the amount of things he can reflect is insane. He can reflect arrows, bullets, bombs, rocket barrages, deadeyes, fucking sound. Look, he can reflect the moon from falling on Clocktown, okay? It's crazy. Ultimately, he's a potent and versatile flanker with the potential to really fuck some backlines, and I do not mean that in a sexual way. Please don't demonetize me, YouTube. And that's compounded further with his Dragon Blade ultimate that's absolutely monstrous if used well, but also really easy to waste. And that right there pretty much sums up my thoughts on Genji. I find playing him to be a bit of a 50-50. I'll either do really well or really bad. He's definitely not an easy character to play, but if you can get into the right headspace, he's one of the funnest. Here we are, halfway through the list, and only now do I get to talk about a support hero. If you were to ask me who I believe is objectively the best healer in Overwatch, I would most likely have to say Lucio. The deal with him is that he has a passive aura around him that applies to anyone within 30 meters of him. Using his crossfade move, Lucio's aura can either give healing or provide a speed boost. This means that of all the support heroes, Lucio is the only one that can consistently heal multiple targets. And if the aura is working just a little too slow, he can amp it up and increase its effectiveness by a lot for a short period of time. Not only is Lucio probably the best support hero for healing, but he's also the most mobile. Not just because of that speed boost, but also because of his ability to ride on walls, which in most cases is good for maneuverability, but in the right circumstances is ridiculous. That's not to say he's easy necessarily. Moves like the Amp It Up and Sound Barrier certainly take quite a lot of situational awareness to use effectively. So it begs the question, why isn't Lucio, like, way higher on the list? Well, I tend to use Lucio as more of a utility hero. Damage-wise, he's kinda bad, so unless you're pushing enemies off cliffs, you really aren't gonna be getting kills very often. As such, aside from the obvious job of healing, Lucio is also good at using speed boost to get people to a point quickly, or preparing people for a push, or contesting a point. And because almost all those jobs mostly require you to just be around your team, it means that the Lucio experience can feel kinda empty sometimes. I still love the guy. At this moment, he's probably the hero I've sunk the second most time into, but he has fallen down slightly from an originally much higher ranking from me. But you know what? 5 out of 22 ain't a bad place to be by any means. I'm still proud to call him my second favorite support hero in the game. PHARAH is a really good Overwatch hero. I should probably say more than that. Okay, PHARAH is a really, really good Overwatch hero. Look, I'm struggling here, okay? I really love PHARAH, but it's a little hard to explain why, given how conventional she is. You've got a rocket launcher, and you can fly. Go nuts! Nah, to be honest, I really wasn't all that big on PHARAH at first. I was never that big on the soldier from TF2 either, and maybe my brain was just having trouble disassociating the two of them. Slowly but surely though, PHARAH won me over. Whether it was booping both myself and others with the concussion blast, or working amazingly in tandem with supports like Mercy and Zenyatta, or just the simple joys of flying around with a rocket launcher, even if it does kinda make you food for snipers. I think above all that though, the biggest part of why I love PHARAH is the fact that for me at least, she's a goddamn palate cleanser. Take any hero that's typically pretty tough or annoying to fight against. Beam characters, REINHARDT, Reaper, Mei, Junkrat. PHARAH's rockets deliver a heaping dose of nope to all of them, and it feels glorious. Compounded by everything I mentioned earlier, that is what cemented PHARAH as my absolute favorite offense hero. Oh, and also, this entry would be pretty shit if I didn't bring up her ultimate. The Barrage ultimate is a devastating attack that can wipe out a ton of people at once, if used correctly. More often than not, though.
It's raining justice! Yeah, there we go.
For me to best explain my love for this character, I think I'm gonna have to tell you guys about my own personal experiences. So first things first. The first few times I played Winston, I thought he was just the most garbage hero in the entire game. He's always been pretty mobile, but his main weapon, the Tesla cannon, did a whopping fuck all for damage. But then other people were talking to me and being like, nah, he's good, you just gotta use the shield and take advantage of his jumping and whatnot. So I tried doing that, and I still died a lot. But then, I don't know, something with Winston and I just clicked. And then all of a sudden I was pulling all kinds of dumb shit, jumping into groups of people, zapping a bunch of enemies at once, deploying bubble shields, and just being an overall dingus. I think Winston is probably at his best when you're not thinking too much about him. Jump in downtown, nosh on some squishies, and get the fuck out of there. You just gotta be in that harassment mentality. If there's one thing I'm still a little bit shaky on though, it's his ultimate. In Primal Rage, Winston is limited to a melee attack with insane knockback, but he's also got a butt ton of health. I don't know, I tend to use it for trying to push people off points, but I'm not even 100% sure if that's the proper way to use it. Regardless though, Winston is an insanely fun tank that absolutely wrecks a lot of heroes in the game. Just be sure not to engage in any R&R. That is Reaper and Roadhog. Those guys will wreck your shit. What? Did you think Winston was gonna be my favorite tank? I mean, you wouldn't exactly be far from the truth, but D.VA is just something else. She's pretty much the most versatile tank in the entire game, as she can respectfully fill a ton of different roles. First of all, her mech comes with boosters that let her fly in whatever direction she's facing. This can be good for making escapes or for making chases. Bumping into someone with the boosters combined with the melee attack does a pretty hefty chunk of damage too. Next we have the defense matrix. This leaves D.VA unable to attack, but in return, a large array shows up in front of her that blocks incoming projectiles, allowing her to protect herself or her team. It's also good to pair with the boosters, as it'll allow her to close gaps on turrets or enemies without much damage. D.VA's main method of attack, though, is her 2 fusion cannons that really don't do very much damage, but fire in a pretty wide spread and don't need to reload. And remember that everything I've mentioned so far is in her mech form alone. If her mech is destroyed, either through the use of her ultimate or through just losing enough health, D.VA herself is still packing a light gun that actually does more DPS than her mech. All these elements together means that D.VA can competently perform the roles of a flanker, backup DPS, and defensive support, which is completely insane. Now don't think that makes her perfect by any means. Like I said, D.VA's fusion cannons are still outclassed by her light gun in terms of DPS, and that's not really the most optimal form to be in a lot of the time. Also, her head hitbox takes up the entire front part of her mech. Like, if you're shooting at D.VA at all while she's in her mech, you are most likely hitting her head. Regardless of a couple shortcomings though, D.VA is a really great jack of all trades. She's not as good at flanking or soloing teams as Reaper or Genji, and she can't provide consistent cover like REINHARDT, but what she does have is that diversity and element of unpredictability that I can't help but completely adore. Before I reveal who number 1 is, let's quickly go over some honorable mentions. Of the 3 snipers in the game, Ana is probably my favorite. I think I might need some more time for her to fully click with me though. Probably the best offensive tank in the entire game, but I don't know, really. I find he gets sort of boring after a little while. Chiaslav, the cavalry's not on the list. Still pretty fun, though. I kinda love playing as Mei, but God, she's so annoying. Consider her the unofficial number 11 on the list. And now, number 1. Okay, look. I'm not gonna lecture you guys on the definition of what an opinion is. You guys are smart folk. But at the end of the day, it is still worth keeping in mind that my number 1 is not the objectively best hero, but the one that provides the most fun and the least hiccups for me personally. I said before, Lucio, in my opinion, is the best healer in the game. But that doesn't mean there isn't room to still acknowledge my absolute favorite. ZENYATTA, to me, is a hero that offers an absolutely perfect mix of support and potent offense. His main mechanics are his orbs, namely the Orbs of Harmony and Discord. The Orb of Harmony applies 30 health per second to any ally of your choice, and the orb will stay on that person so long as they don't go out of Zenyatta's sight for 3 seconds. On the opposite end, the Orb of Discord is applied to enemies, and will amplify any damage taken to them by 30%. Matched with Zenyatta's primary fire, the Orbs of Destruction, or his secondary fire that lets him fire multiple orbs at once, he can completely shred through even the bulkiest of tanks. Individually, these orbs might not sound that good, but together they're absolutely amazing. Being able to heal your teammates while debuffing enemies can often completely change a 1v1 if used well, sometimes even an entire push. This also works in tandem with his Transcendence ultimate that provides a whopping 300 health per second to any teammate within 10 meters of him. This is not only awesome for assisting with pushes, but also for shutting down enemy ults completely. Now, no hero is perfect, and Zenyatta is certainly certainly no exception. He hasn't got anything particularly notable in terms of mobility, and he's also quite squishy. To be fair, most of his health consists of shields, meaning he can regenerate it in most circumstances, but it's still only 200 health to work with. But you know, I really don't mind any of that. Like, that's just perfectly fair balancing, to be totally honest. I don't know what else I can really say. Zenyatta may not be the hero I've notched the most kills with, and he's certainly not the most optimal healer, but of all the heroes that I've sunk hours into, whether I do good or bad with him, he's the one that I haven't gotten even the tiniest bit bored of. Oh, and also assists. Lots of assists. Assists for fucking days.